Hello, everyone. It's the Crackhawk Podcast again for segment 2 here. It's 9 p.m. It is March 15th, 2025, and we got a few things to share with you. Looks like I might be talking a little bit more this
I'm gonna
time.
let you take the reins on this one. I'll interject and add in where I see fit.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, as you all know, that the Ukrainian war has been going on for I think it's 3 years now. 3 years. Can't believe I'm saying that.
20.
Um,
Yeah.
Yep. So not only have we given them buckets load of money, we've given them some hefty loads of military toys and such. Most of which was antiquated items from the Gulf War, essentially, which you should know from 91 to 92. We were involved over there. Where we knocked out the world's, what was that, the second best military in a matter of, just a very
Couple days.
small time. Yeah. I mean, like a year's time, under a year, I think it was. And well, some stats people don't know about the Gulf War is that how low military casualties were for the U.S. in there, and also um, how immense our actual drone strike, or not drone strikes, but aircraft strikes actually killed our own personnel.
Right.
It was almost more dangerous than actually the Republican Guard themselves in many ways, which is kind of wild. But through some of these stats in the Gulf War, you'll find that APCs were destroyed. U.S. APCs, which are what does that stand for, Joey? It's an armored vehicle,
Armored
but not a
personnel
tank.
carrier.
Yep, there we go. And they're generally lighter. They don't have the as large of a cannon on them or anything like that, and they're not as tough as the Abrams tank we had at the time.
Yeah, a modern equivalent, and military folks in the comments fucking light me up. But a modern equivalent would be like the Marine Corps' MRAP. So it's got a personnel carrier and then a mounted gun on the top, normally a 50 cal or Mark IIs, Mark 19s. Um, something of that variety. Not a big cannon, but a gun to defend it. But main priority is
Sure.
to carry people. Yeah.
Yep. So like I said, APCs were destroyed by the Republican Guard against U.S. forces, but an Abram tank, the actual armored OG, the big boy,
Yeah.
never received an actual destruction. It was never confirmed destroyed. The only ones that ever were destroyed in the Gulf War were by our own guns. Essentially, I think after the crews left, they bombed them. The U.S. bombed them, so the technology didn't get out. However, fast forward to 2022, I believe, when the war broke out
I've got a
with Ukraine and
picture here
Russia
for
there.
you, Kevin. This is a M1 Abrams here, just so that the viewers can see what we're talking about.
Yep,
So you got your main
excellent. I
cannon here.
appreciate that.
You've got
Yep,
your two gunners
50
here,
cal there,
the
and then
driver
it was a
sitting
little
real
30
back
cal up
here.
top, I think.
Yep, or the driver's here. I can't remember. I don't know which one is which. But
Sure. And keep in mind, you can make tea on every single tank as well, from what I hear. Fun fact.
I thought that was the British tanks, but you might be right. I know that
I
a lot of the British tanks from World War II had T sections or T spots.
because the
Yeah,
British love their tea, I'm sure.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we left it all in the harbor because they decided to fuck around. So
That's right. That's right. If you ask
spoiled
me,
the
they should be
brothers.
doing more in Ukraine right now instead
Yeah.
of us. But yeah, we'll leave
Well,
that for another time.
so
But
should the rest of the world with their very low spending on NATO. But
yeah, true, and all
that's
their
another.
trolley systems they have to actually move ammunitions. We have to
Right.
send it over a whole ocean to them,
Yep.
including the 31 Abrams that we sent to them. Okay, so basically what the U.S. did, I don't know what bases they pulled these from, but I'm going to go ahead and picture good old Kentucky. Pulling some old Gulf War Abrams, that smell like mothballs.
Right.
Maybe there's some blood stains of the Republican Guard still on them a
Probably.
little bit.
Probably.
Um, they pulled them out of storage, which means they were probably never demilitarized, because usually the tanks you see at like a DMV and such, they're demilitarized, where they don't have firing mechanisms and they're basically just a hunk of metal now.
Exactly.
So they sent them overseas. They sent a total of 31 over to them. So these had 1990 technology in them, which is still good. Like, I'm not going to
Yes.
sit there and be like, this thing
Yeah. This
really,
thing's a piece of
you
shit.
know,
As long as it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
made by any of the major car manufacturers in the 90 in the 90s it was okay. Because
True, true.
whatever the fuck they were on in the 90s, they needed to go back and do something with them because the
Yep.
cars in those
I,
days were garbage.
I assume they probably put a new coat of paint on them. They probably
Right.
took that tan color off it and probably gave it a nice little OD green, maybe some black
Yeah.
striping too there. You know.
I've actually got
Uh,
something on this. So in my experience in the Marine Corps, if there was any kind of vehicles or anything that didn't operate, um, they were never like demoed. So they were always parked normally in the back of the line in the motor T pool, and they would be parked back there and either pieced off for parts or they would just kind of sit there and eventually would be put up to run. So um, I could be completely incorrect, but my understanding is that if there's something that like goes, say the transmission on a Humvee goes out, they won't go and purchase a new transmission for that Humvee. They'll wait until there's another vehicle that is out of service that has a working transmission and put that one in. So essentially, they're just if something goes wrong, it sits and waits until it can be repaired by another vehicle that comes in that is broken that has a working part for this one. So it's kind of a steady flow of things. So these A1 or M1s that you're talking about here, most likely have been gutted. They don't have any of the technology in them that we would, so no radio communications, probably no GPS, no tracking. So they probably were sent over with very basic amenities to them, other than the fact that it ran. However, I don't know, and I could be completely wrong. They could have left all of the equipment in there, and since they were allies or whatever the case is, they left some of that equipment in there. But
right on, right on. Thank you.
that's my piece on that.
That kind of adds some good perception there. You know
Right,
that
right.
people might not be thinking of. So, anyways, so we landed 31 of them over there and started training Russian tank or Ukrainian tank crews how to use them. So it's a little hard to believe that they could just like jump into those and be super efficient with them. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well, perhaps they knew what they were doing. But either way, um, the machines have been pulled off the front line, so they likely are in defensive structures now. What is left of them? So sources say that 19 of the Abrams tanks out of the 31 are confirmed to be damaged or destroyed entirely.
Right.
So that's pretty immense when you think about it. Now, sure, they're going to go up against modern Russian vehicles here, but you also have to think that this tank was undefeatable back in the Gulf War, and not just like, oh, we had a close call there. Like they were pretty much a domineering force entirely.
Hey, real quick, I've got the list of Russian tanks here. So the modern Russian tank is the T90.
Sure, go ahead
They
and share your screen if
also,
you'd like.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is just a list here. So we've got the T90, T72, T64, the T90M, which I'm guessing is the latest one, which is why there's no picture. The T80s, which I was pretty familiar with. I don't remember what era those were in. The T62 and the T55s. This would have been probably
Gotcha.
around the Chinese. No, maybe
It's
this
got
was
kind of
more
a Cold
modern.
War look to it.
Yeah, Cold
Yeah, a little bit
War-esque
more of the
era.
80s.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
T80s are the ones that I was the most familiar with, just based
Yeah.
off of versions and stuff. I think this one has a lot of pull from the M1 Abrams, but I could be completely wrong. But they do
Right
have
on. Right on.
quite a long barrel there. So
Yep. Um, and I'm gonna throw it out there. Like I'm no expert, and I know the radio communications was a big deal, like for the French in World War II, how they never
right,
outfitted their tanks to have radios in them and such. But we
right,
also have such small radios now. I have to assume that the ground forces have that equipment just on their body in their
yeah,
kit.
yeah.
Essentially.
And on the
Um,
communication side of it, our radios that we used were PRC 115s, or I'm sorry, PRC 117s, PRC 150s. Those were the big boxed radios that we use. Those radios were developed in the during the Vietnam War or used during the Vietnam War. I don't know if they were developed then. So the same radios that I used in 2014 and on were the same ones that were used in Vietnam. Um, So radio equipment itself, I don't think is developed a whole ton, but encryption is for sure the biggest
Sure.
aspect of that. So I
Yep.
know from a lot of the different military vehicles that I've been in, they have mounts and everything for the radio systems. However, the radio systems are taken out most of the time. So when you get done with a mission or an op or whatever, you take the radio out and then you carry that in because it is encrypted. So that's most likely
Sure.
what happened with that. So sorry, I keep
Sure. Yep.
interrupting you.
No, that's all right. It's good info to add in. So if you've basically 19 out of your 31 being decommissioned, I find that to be a pretty failing grade on whether it comes down to the pilots or whatever it might be, or just simply
Right.
what they're up against.
Yeah.
Um, I look at that as kind of like a special stat in a way where like the mainstream media won't cover that one, but I would say that it's a blaring result of probably incompetence on the battlefield. It probably just goes to show that it was probably a really bad choice for Zelensky to do that. But
Yeah.
I don't have to go all out like politically there. Um, but I was during the beginning of it, like I was hearing that the Russian tanks weren't outfitted with thermal and stuff like that, and I thought, well, that seems ludicrous. Like, how are you
Right.
ever going to see any of the anti-tank crews hiding in the ditch? Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to kind of assume that this is a good indicator that they probably do have thermal and they're pretty state of the art tanks that Russia's using there,
Yeah.
especially if they have really, really put a major dent in the Abrams coming over there in like a year's time. I
Right.
mean, they did some real work on them, and it comes into another thing. I was going to kind of bridge it into a little bit because they they actually don't credit a whole lot of the tanks being destroyed by anti-tank infantry or even other tanks. It's mostly drone attacks, guided artillery, and armor. Oh, one of the problems is armor limitations too.
Right.
But anyways, so they're not really crediting as like any like tank battles taking them out. It's mostly like drone warfare,
Right.
and I suppose so. Initially, I picture it like a drone coming in maybe behind the tank where the armor's a little bit weaker. But I guess all
Right.
you really need to do in that situation is probably just wedge it into the track real good, best you
Yep.
can, and you can at
Yep.
least decommission it that way.
Yeah. Either
Um,
the tracks or if the gunner's got the hatch open. I've seen
yeah,
plenty of videos where drones will come over and they'll drop. They're carrying just a mortar, and they'll drop the mortar, and as soon as it hits it, the primer takes over, right? So if that's the case, then they could just drop it, hover it right over the tank. As soon as that hatch is opened, or if the hatch is open, they drop it right in, and then that's it, right? So
yeah, yeah,
if you're secured and your hatches are secured and closed and everything, and there is a drone, then of course the tracks would be another good place for that. Um,
yep.
yeah, I mean,
But it was a learning curve for myself to actually realize that the drones could pack that immense of a punch because I keep seeing the videos on whatever it is, even Instagram's loaded with these videos
yeah,
where you just it seems like they're always seeking out somebody that's fleeing. Do you ever
yeah,
realize that?
yeah. Either that or hiding in like
Yeah, somebody that's
foxholes and
like
stuff.
they checked out of the battle a long time ago, but they just send it in
Yeah,
and kill them that way. But I was really surprised to see that fully armored, expensive war machines are being slowed down by
right.
inexpensive,
Drones.
uh,
Yeah, and
combatants.
I mean, the ones that I've seen, I mean, they can't be more than a foot wide, and they're
I know,
carrying.
right? It's like, how do you put that much explosive on them?
Yeah,
That's
I
what's
mean,
like,
even that, or like the one that I was talking about where it was carrying an actual mortar. I mean, it was just held on by string, and it, did the same thing that like an Amazon package to the drone would do, and it just dropped it straight down.
yeah,
And if
yeah,
those things are allowed to fly over our houses,
yeah,
what can they use it
yeah,
for in war? You know what I mean? And with the FFA here or FAA in America limiting the ability to fly drones and develop them in that sense is putting us back. I mean, essentially decades, right? Because if China and Russia are using these and Ukraine are using these, if there is a war of any kind that involves the United States, we don't have it, right? I mean, I'm sure that the military has some sort of drone capability, and obviously we have, our high flying drones, which are, um, generation eliminators. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those big
Yeah.
drones are fine, but these little drones that are, I mean, inexpensive to build and make are being used as war weapons, right? And those things are almost guaranteed cheaper than your standard M16 rifle, you
Oh
know.
yeah, for sure, for
And
sure.
and
Yeah.
that's just what it's going. That's the way that the world has developed, and that's what it's going to. And I mean, we're gonna have to figure something out, you know. But
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it is kind of like this terrifying thing where it seems like it's you can make offensive things so
Right.
cheap now to take out really high dollar defenses.
Right.
Um so
It's honestly reminding me of going back to guerrilla warfare, like in the Vietnam War. You know, we thought originally that we would just go in and sweep these guys up, right? Because they don't have technology, they're not as advanced as us. But it was going back to using what you had, right? Improvision,
yep. Yep.
trying to figure out what works best for you. That's where the punji stick spike traps came in, and you know, there'd be people in fucking trees and shit. You know, it's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's the times, and it's also the commitment from whoever it is on the other side to no matter what survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that fascinated me about Vietnamese warfare was basically they were able to believe it or not, with more rudimentary weapons, they were able to lock down a lot of airspaces by having enough legitimate SAM sites
Right.
to be able to shoot down long range airplanes or helicopters.
Yeah.
So if you flew any lower, you'd be clear of those because you had to have a certain elevation for those to hone India.
Right.
But pretty much everybody knew to lay on your back
Yeah.
and to shoot up in the air, and it was like the most stable way to shoot. So you'd have a full AK-47 round, magazine of 32 rounds emptied out India, plus how many other people were there. So that's a lot of rounds that adds up fast if people are really nailing it that well.
Right.
And I just thought that was kind of fascinating because it was like the pilot said it. They said you were damned if you flew high enough, and you were damned if you flew low enough. And it was
Yeah.
like it truly was a nowhere is safe type thing for them.
That is true. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that Vietnam is definitely and you could kind of say in Afghanistan as well, them being kind of masters of their desert land. Like
Right.
we were never, even though we were like significantly superior, it still didn't really it didn't make a difference in the end. And like
Right.
think about all the casualties. They don't even care about the casualties, but they still got it done. But
Right.
technically they were decimated in the numbers department,
Oh,
but they
absolutely.
still have their land.
Yeah.
They still have their land, and
Yeah. I think we
I
had
think you
like
could
36,000 or 3,600 U.S. deaths. I think
yeah,
somewhere around
yeah,
there.
yeah, but I think they correlate it out. I don't have it in me, but it's like for every one U.S. soldier, I want to say it was like 25
Yeah.
Vietnamese.
Yeah.
It's a pretty immense number when you add
Oh, you're
that
talking
up.
about I'm sorry. The number I said was Afghanistan, Iraq.
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah,
I
yeah. I
don't.
guess I don't know that
For
entirely.
Vietnam, it
Yeah,
was I don't know. There was a ton of numbers, but or a ton of
yeah,
people that
yeah.
died. But
But I think you could also apply that to Russia a little bit
yeah.
because they're kind of in this mode of, and Ukrainians are used to similar weather and stuff like that, and they're culturally similar. Like I keep saying, the
Right.
boomer generation of Ukraine is they very much speak Russian. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
they
There's I
do.
mean a huge majority of the country speaks Russian.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, but Russia's in an all-out mode, very much like you could argue the Afghans or the Vietnamese, where it's like they know that their border is extremely difficult to defend. In fact, it's not defendable,
right.
and that's really a reason why they're going all out on this, really. And
Yeah.
they don't seem to be, like you look at the film and it looks really exhausting warfare there. It looks
Yeah.
so cold, so muddy, so
Right.
wet. Like I think back to all the Afghan footage I've seen over the years growing up, and like everyone in those, even though it's hot looking, they look way more comfortable than
Right.
anybody in the videos in Afghan or Ukraine.
Ukraine. Yeah.
But like I really think it's the Russians just they don't care, and they're just gonna keep on it.
Yeah.
And I think if they've really dispatched nearly 20 Abram tanks, that's a pretty big
That's
feat.
a good number. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a
Yeah,
lot of that
yeah,
has to do with I mean just both sides think that they're right. You know, and I
yeah.
mean that's every you could put that into every aspect of human life, right? But
Sure.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wish I had more information and was able to talk about it more uh,
Yeah.
you know,
I think it's a topic
effectively.
right now with the political landscape. I think a lot of people are trying to avoid learning anything
Right.
about it because even though I'm talking about it right now, I
Yeah.
don't consider myself
Concerned
that
about it. Yeah.
yeah
Or
knowledgeable.
involved.
And then yeah, that's part of it too. We don't really feel like we should be, even though
Yeah.
well we still should be because we get our nose in it still.
Right.
But you know
Yeah.
whether it's money or Abrams, but
Yeah.
I get it. We're just getting. They always say that that's like the justification is we're getting rid of old supply, old stock of things that are just sitting around anyways. And I get that. I get that. But
Yeah. To an extent, I
their
guess.
his
Yeah.
their history now though those devices are, and
Right.
part of me thinks they'd look better in a museum.
Yeah. 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 I know that. I mean, the Abrams. Like, I've always been a big fan of. I mean, it's just it was the peak of tank technology, right, for the time.
Yeah,
And I know that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it kind of went untested for a number of years because I think it was rolled out in the 80s, but of course we didn't have an enemy yet to fight.
Right.
You know, but to me, I kind of have this thing of being bummed that I get it. It wasn't under U.S. control. These tanks getting destroyed, so it doesn't really
Right.
count. But they still were an undefeated tank, and they no longer are in a way. Like it kind of
Right.
like tarnishes the reputation in my mind a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the other thing you got to think of is that not only do like those the destroyed tanks, not only are they essentially useless now, but they are a window into how the U.S. develops their technology. Because
yes.
even if they were built in the 80s and they hadn't seen much upgrades since then, right? And say that the vehicles that were sent over were all from the 90s, right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah,
Essentially all
yep.
from there. Okay.
91 to 92.
So
All the stuff from the Gulf War, from
right.
my
So
knowledge.
obviously our technology has improved exponentially since then. So it's not like they're
Hmm.
able to see like what we're capable of using now. However, it does see, or it does, in my mind, it gives them the opportunity to say, okay, well, we destroyed that Abrams. Now we're going to put it on the back of a tow truck. I know it won't fit there, right? But put it on the back of a tow truck, take it back to Russia, and rip it apart, and see
Yeah.
exactly how they made it, how it's so effective, what it is that and of course this has all happened uh, before this, before the Abrams tanks were destroyed. There, we had because you look at the T90 and tell me how similar that is to the M1 Abrams, right? So it's always
Right,
a
right.
it's always a competition of who gets it first, and then whoever gets it first, if they for any stretch of the means uh, are giving this equipment or this technology to another country that could potentially be um, like a negative or like an enemy at any point in time, they now know how our tracks operate, how the engines that we put in them run, the transmission systems, the cannons. I mean, essentially everything about this tank they now can take apart and and reverse
Yep.
engineer essentially, or at least find out like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, the T90s had a problem with I don't know the turret not swiveling, a full amount because of the wiring that's in it, right? And this is completely made up. I don't know if it's correct, but
Yeah.
when you
Yep.
have a
Just a
tank
scenario.
and the turret is spinning, right, and it's a connected cable, it's going to twist that cable up, right? It's just the same way
Yeah.
when I was working on wind turbines, it would do that as well, right? So if the T90, for example, had that issue and the M1 Abrams did not, now they can say, oh, they just did a connected like a slip ring for power, right? So that they don't have to worry about cables. But they wouldn't have. I mean, they probably would have figured it out, but they wouldn't have done it as quickly as if they had had the Abrams tank. Does that make sense?
Right.
And I know that's a
Because
very
it never takes as long to steal an idea as it does to actually come up with that idea.
exactly. And I'm not
Yep.
saying that's a very broad thing. I just happen to know about slip rings versus cabling for turrets, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
but that would be something like if they had on the T90, if they had never thought about that, then they get an Abrams, they tear it apart, they're like, how the fuck is this thing even connected? Oh, okay, that probably gets rid of the turret twist, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
just one little, I mean, little things like that could be as simple. I mean, think about just that aspect now. Okay, so if the T90 had that issue where you had, let's say, for math's sake, you had two rotations that you could do full rotations in the turret on a T90. and then after that you had to stop and then rewind everything, right, and go back to zero, essentially, correct?
Yeah.
That itself is a flaw, right? Because if you're in a battle and you've got to spin this fucking turret around a whole bunch of times, you can't stop and just wait. Again, the benefit is that it's a circle, right? So you can just spin back around the one time to wherever you got to go, and then you can continue later on. But that's time that you're spent not focusing on
Yeah.
the target. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
so in this example, if the Abrams had that versus if the T90s didn't, and now they do, now that adds them, and on the battlefield, you're talking about extra minutes or extra lives, extra seconds or extra
Exactly.
lives, right? If you
Especially in
don't have,
tank warfare, you can argue
yeah, if
too.
you don't
I
have
mean,
that,
any warfare, but tanks, yes.
right, and if you don't have to untwist that turret cable, I mean, that's minutes itself just saved, not having to do that, right? So I don't know, and I don't even think that that's a problem in the first place, but that's the example I used. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Like here's kind of a goofy thing at my work a little bit, and I'll just go ahead and throw it out there because it's similar. As long as you have a device out there, it's exposed in a way. So I'm thinking. So what I'm applying is we dispose of our old laptops,
right,
and the company that we do business for, they want the hard drives to be in them so they can give us a certificate of destruction in their own words.
right,
However, you know how small SSD hard drives are. I really pitched the idea to my boss that we should just break them open real quick and snap the hard drives. Then we just know.
yeah,
We know from ourselves that it's done and it's not a vulnerability out there whatsoever.
right,
So you could argue, just like our laptop laying out there with a hard drive in it, having this carcass of an M1 Abrams tank out there that we don't know if they've recovered it or what they've done with it. Took photos of it. It is a potential
yep,
vulnerability no matter how you slice it.
yeah,
Just
absolutely,
just its existence. It would be safer in a museum over
yes,
here stateside.
yes, yeah, yeah. That way the Chinese people can come over and take pictures of it and everything. But at least it's
Yeah,
worthless
well,
even
that is also
anyway.
true. That is also
I'm
true.
sorry, that's
So
not racist. That's a technical aspect of military from the Chinese. Don't
we're
don't
actually
yell at
being
me.
endearing. We're
Don't
honestly
yell at
just being
me. It's a
endearing to
fact.
them.
Look it up. And if you think I'm wrong,
Yeah.
fuck you. Look it up. Go to your Walmart and find those fuckers taking pictures of all the toys. I don't think so. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's where you get the counterfeit Elmo doll.
Right.
That's definitely from the photos.
Right. Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, but that's all I really had for this little piece here.
Okay.
Thanks for adding the snippets there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
I think that well, I'll get I don't know. I'll say my piece on it. I think that with the without the politics involved, right? These tanks were sent to another country, and the members of that country or the members of the army of that country decided that they or were trained on it, but probably not efficiently enough to operate them to the full capability. I'm not certain what was sent over with them, like with the tanks, as far as technology goes. But if they were only reliant on the fact that it was an up armored tank and not so much the capabilities that it does have, I think that that's probably why a lot of them have been destroyed. Um, it would be the same thing as if I handed well, I can't even say I hand a 3-year-old an iPhone now. If I handed a Queen Elizabeth an iPad, and I said, "Hey, could you, get on here and change your Wi-Fi information for me?" She wouldn't know what to do, right? But she would at least,
yep.
see the thing and be able to figure it out, or, monkey around with it enough to
You'd
to
hold it and
to
probably
process
drop it
it, right?
eventually.
Exactly. But that's the same thing with the tanks, right? So even if the
Yep.
people and I'm sure Ukraine have got some similar tanks, right? But the Abrams, of course, are a different animal. They're an undefeated tank, or up until
Yep.
now, right? So for them to have just jumped in it and say, "Oh, well, I know how to drive a tank, probably," and then not realizing that there are other aspects to this vehicle that make it so much better, right? A full crew in an Abrams tank is undefeatable. You know what I mean? So
Exactly. Yep.
I think that it comes down to a mixture of lack of knowledge, lack of information, lack of training, right? And then also most likely lack of technology in the tanks themselves. So
Sure.
even if
Sure.
it
A
was
perfect
something as
storm.
simple with like the gyroscope, if it doesn't tell you how level you are, right? If that system itself isn't working, then you could easily go into a ditch and then now you're stuck and now you're spending hours or whatever it is trying to pull this tank out and then here comes Mother Russia pulling in, and
Yep.
you're
Here
stuck
comes a little drone that's like
right, and you're
$200
stuck
with its
dead
loadout.
broadside onto this fucking T90 or whatever the hell they're using now. And I mean, if you can get your turret around that quick, you might be able to get a shot off, but it's I think a lot of it has to do with lack of training. That and like every tank guy that I've known, every person that has been and operated in a tank, first of all says like that's their home, like they live there essentially. I mean, you
Yeah,
have to.
yeah,
Everybody's seen the movie Fury, right? So
yeah.
you essentially have
Brad
to
Pitt
live
said
in it.
it's my home.
Yep. So and I mean, but there's not a single thing that is going on inside that tank that is not calculated or planned or anything all together. It's a unit cohesion. The same thing we were talking about with the Spartans last episode, right? That cohesion, that unit grab is most likely one of the bigger factors in that. So,
Yep. Agreed. Agreed.
all right.
You've made your point, Joey. I like it.
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
like it.
So we are wrapping up here. I guess we're going to start a new thing where we leave you guys with a quote at the end. So
Yeah.
Kevin had a great
Yep.
Civil War quote last time, and I have one by Anonymous, so we don't know who it was. I would like to think that this quote applies to my life pretty heavily, so it means a lot to me. It says, "I have a photographic memory, but I always forget to bring my camera." Anonymous.
All right.
It just means
Nice.
I can't fucking remember anything. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. This has been Crack Hawk. I'm Joseph. He's Kevin.
Take care.
Joey, whatever it is. Take care. We'll see you next time.